we are going to start with softwares mainly, right? So for .NET, we are going to use Visual Studio for .NET development and all, which is IDE, also called as Integrated Development Environment. So it is a IDE from Microsoft, right? So there are multiple horizontal and vertical versions of Visual Studio in current market. So these versions, right, we are going to discuss during our .NET versions during our introduction class itself, which is like .NET introduction class, which we are going to start, right? And then, so when we actually start off with SQL Server mainly, right? SQL Server. So I'll give you a link to download SQL Server and install that one too. So primarily, yes, now we just need Visual Studio mainly, right? Which I'm gonna give you. If you already have Visual Studio installed, yeah, that will be fine. You don't have to install again the one which I'm gonna provide. But if you don't have, you can actually download. I'll actually help you out with the link and everything, right? And keep it ready for our further classes, right? Okay, so let me give you the link. So basically, we are going to download it from the Visual Studio official site of Microsoft, right? So here in Visual Studio, if you can see, we're going to actually download the Express edition mainly, right? So where you can see just below this Visual Studio Express, right? Edition on community. Don't go for community. So you have Express editions, right? Where you can see you have Express for desktop, Express for web, Express for Windows, and so on, right? So as we're going to start the C# development, right? You can install either the desktop one or the Windows one, right? So if required, you can actually go ahead with Express for Windows, right? And then once we are starting with Express for web, we can go ahead with this, right? So these are because of the licensing. Okay, who is this? Is Sridhar?
Yeah.
Okay. So guys, is it issue with everyone? You guys are able to see my screen? You should be able to see because I'm sharing. Vinod, Mahesh, are you guys able to see? Gopi, Kritika? Oh, you're not able to see my screen? Okay.
Yeah, I'm able to see.
Okay, thanks, Vinod. Let me reshare my screen again. Go ahead with this link mainly, and you can actually start downloading the Windows Express edition. So the Express edition is a free edition of Visual Studio from Microsoft, right? There are other versions which we are going to discuss. I'm going to give you the complete picture of versions of Visual Studio we have, right? And both horizontal and vertical versions we have as part of Visual Studio. The licensing, how the licensing is divided, right? And what is the differences in different licenses we have in Visual Studio and all, right? But as of now, you can see this is the latest, Express edition, which is 2015 Visual Studio Express edition you're gonna download. Yeah, you can download it and install. So this is about the sorry, Visual Studio which you're going to download as part of software. So that is about software which we have, right? I'm gonna help you out with the remaining stuff in our upcoming classes, which is the SQL Server, what we'll see later. Right. So for today, we'll start with the introduction of maybe .NET Framework, and we'll see some of the background of versions and different things, right? And then we actually continue with the .NET Framework internals, which is CLR, right? Right. So starting with the basics mainly. So in general, right, there are two different types of programming we have. One, we have system programming, and then we have application programming. So it is very important to understand before we learn any technology that what type of technology or what type of programming we are actually learning and what are the different capabilities of the program, right? So now as we are actually learning like .NET, right? So mainly we have to understand what type of language .NET and mainly what are different things that we can actually get from .NET. What different type of applications which we can develop out of our .NET mainly, right? So here when we talk about system programming, right? So system programming is a programming language using which we can develop software applications which can communicate directly with hardware, right? So for example, take an example of operating system. So operating system is one of the software, right? Definitely, when we talk about operating system, it's again a software, right, which is talking directly to hardware, right? Now this is called as a system program, right, which can directly trigger signals with a hardware, right, to perform different actions. For example, let's say we have a printer software, right? For example, take the example of this current editor, right, which you can see Notepad++ here, where I'm actually showing up the writing, right? So you can see an option. There is an option called print now, right? So when I click on this print now, which means so I have a software here, which is called as a Notepad, right? So when I click on something called print, right, now this is going to send, right, a request to operating system mainly, because Notepad++ directly can't talk to hardware, which is like a printer setup directly. No, it can't, because this is an application there. Now this talks to operating system, right, which is a platform on top of which Notepad++ is installed. And the operating system will generate signals to hardware, and whatever request you have submitted as part of Notepad++ to print, that will be printed as part of your hardware, right? Now this is how you can see. Now here you can see this part is called as your system program, and this is your application, right? Which means when you're talking about application, this is a program which needs a platform to run. Very important, right? Now this platform can be your operating system or any other software on top of which it will run, right? So now when I say any other software, it can also be something called framework, right? And when it comes to .NET framework, actually .NET applications, right, needs a minimum of .NET FX, which is .NET Framework, and .NET Framework is again an application program which needs an operating system on top of which my .NET Framework can be installed, right? Now this is how it actually works. Now you can see that .NET is a pure application program, like programming language, which means we cannot develop any sort of system applications, right, or system programs using .NET, because .NET itself is depending on multiple softwares to actually start execution. Now this is the reason why we normally call .NET programming language as application programming language, right, which needs a platform. Now let's talk about, we are actually getting some terms here like platform, like framework, like programming language and all. Now let us understand the small relativity between all these terms we are actually hearing up, right? Now whenever we talk about the platform, right, platform, so we generally actually refer to like operating systems. We have multiple platforms available in market, like we have Windows platform, we have Linux, we have Sun Microsystems, we have Chrome, we have, right, we have other TPA platforms which run, which are used to run the small appliances. So many, right? Now, when we're talking about platform and the programming language dependency, right? So let's understand the connectivity between the programming language and platform, right? Based on which we always call something called platform independent or dependent languages, right? So we all would have heard that Java we always hear that Java is a pure platform independent language. It doesn't depend on any platform to run, right? And when we talk about any language like C or C++, we all say that okay, C is a pure platform dependent language. Now, why do we normally call platform dependent and why do we normally call platform independent? Right. So there is a reason behind, right, why we normally call them dependent and independent programming languages, right? So let us see the reason why do we actually call. So we're going to take up the languages like C. First we'll understand C, and then we'll go with Java, how it is designed to make it platform independent, and then we'll understand .NET, whether it is platform dependent or independent, right? So that we would have a clear idea on what is the platform dependency we have with respect to the framework compatibility, right? Okay, perfect. Now first let's start with C language, how the actual compilation process happens, right? So remember this word called compile. Very important word. This actually decides on how best a programming language works based on the platform you're using. Fine. Now let's say we have a machine, right? Let's take as if this is a machine you have, right, where some operating system will be deployed, right? Now in this situation, let's say I'm gonna work on something called C. Let's say this is my C program which I'm trying to run on top of my operating system. But definitely when I create any program like C program, I have to definitely use one of the operating systems to run the program, right? Now here, so when we talk about C program or C++ program, right, there is no exclusive compiler for C, right? Every operating system, it can be Windows or Linux or any other operating system, provides its own compiler for C. Which means when we talk about Windows have got a C compiler internally. When we talk about Linux have got a C compiler internally. So the working model of these two may be different, but yes, they actually have a compiler for each of them, right? Now when we are talking about this, right, now you can understand here. So when I have my C program written, when I run on Windows operating system, right, it completely depends on the compiler model, how it actually works, right? Similarly, when I run the same program again on Linux, it again depends on the compiler model of Linux, that's how it is designed. Now you can see that it actually depends on completely which platform you are running, right? Because it doesn't have any dedicated a compiler or any framework as such. So that is the reason why we normally call C or C++ as a pure platform dependent programming languages, right? So now same way when we talk about Java, let's take an example of Java now, right? So Java have got its own framework called JRE, or we normally call JVM, which is Java Virtual Machine. Now how it works is, let's say you have an operating system, right? Now before actually loading a simple Java program on top of operating system, it has to be loaded on top of something called FX, which is called as a Java framework or JVM, which means this is my Java program, right? So now what we'll be doing is we'll always mount our Java program into something called Java framework, which is let's call it JavaFX. And JavaFX in turn will actually move that code after some processing into operating system. Now you can see that there is a middle layer before running your program on top of your operating system, because any program has to be finally executed on top of our operating system because it has to generate some output. Right? Now you can see Java is the Oracle vendors product. Right? Oracle vendors product. Now Oracle, anyways, before it was Sun Microsystems product, but anyways Oracle actually acquired Sun Microsystems. Now it's a pure Oracle product. Now you can see Oracle vendor takes care of developing this Java framework for all platforms, which means we have a platform, we have a framework for Windows, we have a Java framework for Linux, we have a Java framework for other Sun Microsystem platforms and Chrome and so on. Every platform have got its own Java framework version. That's why if you ever try to download Java framework, right, it will give you different operating system options. Do you want to download for Windows or Linux or Mac or any other, right? Also, it will actually ask you for whether you want a Windows 64-bit or 32-bit, whether you want for Mac 32-bit or 64-bit, right? It will have multiple options, which means you can see that Oracle vendor is taking care of providing support for Java framework across all platforms, which means anyone who is developing any Java program doesn't have to worry much about the platform. Why? Because the framework is so strong that it can run on any other platforms. So that is the reason why we normally call Java as a pure platform independent language. It is all about a Java framework designed and developed for multiple platforms, right? And it has a complete pure independency of a direct programming language into operating system. Right? Anyways, we'll come to compilation process. Compilation process is something which you'll understand how it actually works and why it actually works. Right? Now here, your Java framework is taking care of the complete compilation process and execution process. So that's the reason why for Java we don't have to worry about which platform we are working, because we know we just have to download and install that framework, and any Java program will run on any platform. That's how it works. Now in the same way, we have .NET framework, which means when I have a .NET application, I also have a .NET FX, which means, right, as like C, I don't have to load the .NET program directly into operating system. It actually gets loaded into .NET framework, and then .NET framework is the one which provides the instructions to operating system, right? And we know that .NET is a Microsoft vendors proprietary software or proprietary development programming language. But Microsoft doesn't provide support for all platforms. It mainly provides support for Windows. The highest, when I say mainly, which means all the latest versions of .NET framework are compatible with the Windows operating systems, right? And then it actually gives a partial support to other platforms like Linux or Mac. Like when I say partial support, let's say if my 4.5.x version is running in my .NET framework, maybe 3.5 version or maximum 4.0 version of support will be happening in other platforms. So that is the reason why we may not call .NET as a pure independent language, platform independent language, because if you see in some perspective where it supports mainly Windows, then we can call Microsoft applications can run best on Windows platform. So inherently you can say that Windows .NET is a platform dependent language, but as you can see that it actually provides support for some of the previous versions, right? Maybe it may keep one major version back to support other platforms. So even there we can call that Microsoft .NET is a platform independent. So it's like a partial play it actually does. So that is the reason why whenever we talk about any application plan for development, right? So the development will happen right on top of Windows, and the deployments and the main productions, right, supported operating systems are Windows operating systems. Anyways, when we actually come back to Windows, web application development, I'll explain you more about the differences of different operating systems we have in Windows, right? We just don't have operating system for only a personal use. There are servers, there are other horizontal versions of Windows operating systems we have for different stuffs. Yep, we are going to learn even the horizontals of Windows versions, right? Which is very important. As a developer, you should have the knowledge of even the Windows versions and the bit machines we have. And what is a bit machine? What is the difference between 32-bit and 64? All these things, anyways, we're gonna learn as part of our Windows operating system, version understanding. Right? So this is something which is your platform dependency and independency of any programming language we know it. Right? So now, we were talking about one thing called compile. What is compilation process? Sometimes we normally call compile or build process. Right? Both are like technical terms which you normally use or denote one specific thing here. See, whatever program we write, we normally write in plain English, right? And definitely, if I try to load this program directly onto machine, onto hardware, onto any middleware platform, definitely they'll not, right? Onto machine they'll not understand. Machine will not understand what is a user understandable language because it understands only binaries, right? So in this situation, definitely, whenever I'm writing a program, I should not have a dependency that okay, I can't run this program until unless I have to convert. So any programming language, right? So first it will be converted to binaries, which is called as a machine code, right? Or you can also call it as assembly code, or sometimes you normally call it as assembly or binaries, right? And these binaries actually run on top of your operating system, right? Which is like hardware elements, right? Now here, this complete process of conversion, right? Your program getting converted into code. Now I just said in English, but it can be different type of languages also. When we understand the complete build process, we're going to understand the complete build process of .NET, how it happens, right? And then anyways we'll go into internals, right? So it actually converts into machine understandable language, and machine understandable language will be loaded onto the operating system and hardware, and the output will be generated. Now this is called as your compilation process or build process. Right? Now let us understand how the compilation or build process happens in .NET. Very important, right? Because understanding compilation process or the build process is important. Because once you understand that, then only we have an insight on how it actually works internally. Right? So now let's understand how the build normally happens. Right? So now you know what is the build process mainly, right? Every programming language will have its own build process, and the framework, which is framework of that respective programming language, will take care of every process there, right? Now here, when we are talking about .NET mainly, right? .NET have got its own build process and its own multiple compilers to build. Now this process completely happens through a compiler component. Very important. Right? When we're saying that okay, this is a build process happening. Now who is actually helping us to build? It's a compiler, and compiler is specific to programming language. .NET will have its own compilers to build. Java will have its own compilers to build on, right? But for now, let's understand how it works in .NET. Simple. Now, mainly before we go to build process, we have to understand one more thing. .NET supports multiple languages. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that it supports English, Chinese, and all. Yeah, I mean it do support multiple language support for which is also called as a localization part. But here we are talking about multiple languages, which is multiple syntactical programming languages. We are actually referring to that. Now here, when we say multi-language support, now which means, let me give you an example of multi-language. The most used language, right, is C#, really, mostly used, right? So when we say mostly used, now initially, right? Initially, when we actually talk about .NET, right? Even before .NET, we had C++ and Java prevailing, which are mostly object-oriented programming languages. We'll understand this one word called object-oriented programming language, right? When we actually move on to C#, right? So now, when actually .NET introduced, when it actually came into market during initial 2000s, right? Now it actually supported few languages. Now as of now, it has got 61 set of language support. Basically, I'll give you some languages which are direct support, and others can be plugged in. So you can understand C# have got a complete syntax same as Java, right? And if you take VB, there is one more language called VB, which is called as a Visual Basic. That's before .NET got into market, right? Microsoft have two programming languages which were prevailing a lot, which is one VB and ASP. So these two were languages. VB mainly used for Windows-based applications, and ASP mainly used for web-based applications. These two were the softwares which are Microsoft proprietary, and they are not object-oriented. They are plain programming languages to create programs like structures. That's it. No programming languages here. But when it got introduced, now you can see that people who are actually working with the VB, yep, they can also directly move .NET because the syntax and everything will be same, and they can start using VB, which is a Visual Basic language. People who are actually proficient with Java and they want to migrate, yes, they have a complete C#, right? Because C# almost all it actually takes up the syntax of Java. Yes, definitely the keywords and things will be different as part of programming language, but syntax-wise, don't even have to worry, right? And similarly, it has got multiple direct languages. Let me give you some set. It supports J#, it supports F#, right? It have got something called JS, or sometimes called as JS.NET. It have C++ support. Now when we say C++, it have got one more product called VC++, a very powerful COM component developer programming language we had, right? before .NET got into market. Even when .NET was there, right, till 2010 and all, VC++ was a very powerful programming platform for component development, right? At the kernel level, right? It was very powerful. In the same syntax we use here, which is C++, right? Similarly, we have there are 9 programming languages which are directly enabled in Visual Studio, right? These are 3, and then you have PowerShell, right? We normally call it as Windows PowerShell generally, because PowerShell sometimes when we talk about shell it comes to Linux also, right? And we have a Ruby language and we have Python, right? So in general we normally call IronRuby. Anyways, if you know this programming language, yeah, we can actually use it, but don't worry. There are multiple programming languages. Now why I'm actually taking up all this language now, you'll understand. Because build process, right, requires which programming language you are actually selecting. Very important, right? So these are the direct 9 languages which it have support, and anyways remaining programming languages which we were talking about, right, will be plugged in and can be used. And take an example of Salesforce, right? Now you can actually plug in direct Salesforce into your Visual Studio and start programming. Yep, I mean we have complete plugin support. You can directly use Visual Studio for complete PHP website maintenance. We can do that even if it doesn't support that PHP, but there are plugins which you can use, and Visual Studio completely supports PHP development, right? PHP is altogether different, programming for web developments, but you can use Visual Studio, right? So it has got so many compatible things, and you can use one platform for all, which is Visual Studio, right? Just one very powerful IDE which can be used for Windows-based application development, web-based application development, your mobile application development, right? So when I say mobile, you can actually think of Windows Mobile, but using this, you can also develop Android. You can develop Android, and you can develop even the iPhone, which is I would say kind of like iOS, right? You can develop any type. How it is supporting? It is supporting again through a programming language or a TPA, a component called Xamarin. There is a third-party software tool called Xamarin, which is completely compatible with Visual Studio. Just integrate and start developing any type of mobile application you want, either Windows, Android, or iOS applications, right? Just it do support. And using this, we can develop web services. Using it, we can develop something called API components, accelerate component stuffs, right? You can have RESTful. When we say web service, you can have RESTful and SOAP services. Also, you can actually TPAI, which is third-party app integrations you can do, right, directly using Visual Studio, right? You can have any lib access, you can perform Visual Studio. And there are so many things that Visual Studio is compatible compatible for integrating and using it, right? Maybe that is the reason why we normally call sometimes this is also called as a RAD tool, right, which is a rapid application development tool, right, which is compatible of most of the languages, including most of the app integrations around. Right? Now here, coming back to multiple languages, right? When we talk about multiple languages, now if you look back here, you're talking about code converted to so and so that it can run on so and so platform. Now when we're talking about code, right, I just gave some example of an actual language, but here understand that I'm actually talking about the multiple syntactical programming languages. Now here when we talk about execution model, right? So when we talk about execution model here, which comes to let's say build process mainly. We normally call it as build process or execution model. right? Or compilation process. You can take it as you can take it and in whatever way you want. But this is something which actually gives us the complete model set of a current execution process. Now, starting with the first step. The first step is anyways to code, right? Whatever code you have written is called as a source code. Source code. And this source code can be in any language. It can be in C# language, it can be a VB, it can be in C++, any language based on a language you are selecting. Which means you can see that there is no direct step of conversion of a programming language to direct machine code. Why? Because we never know which language we selected, and definitely we have to convert it to respective machine code. For that reason, what Visual Studio does is, what Microsoft vendor does is, for each programming language there is a compiler. We normally call, for C# there is a compiler called C# compiler. For VB there is a compiler called VB compiler, right? Similarly for C++ there is something called C++ compiler. Now they are separate. So as soon as you select a project and as soon as you select a language type, right, automatically that type of compiler will be automatically attached to the program. So whenever you start build, so that specific compiler, it can be C# or VB or C++, comes into picture, and it actually converts, right, the program you've written into something called managed code, or most famously we normally call IL, which is intermediate language, or sometimes MSIL code, which is Microsoft Intermediate Language, or we also call it as ILA, which is Intermediate Assembly Language, or Intermediate Assembly. Right? Now this is called as your half compiled code. Now still the complete compilation is not done. So what it will do, when I say intermediate language, what does it mean? Right? When we are actually talking about multiple language support in .NET, so definitely, right, internally .NET has got one specific language which it can understand. So to that one specific language, yes, whatever programming language you are using, there is a compiler to convert any specific programming language into something called MSIL, which is called as a Microsoft Intermediate Language, or Intermediate Assembly Language, or a managed code. So this is called as a half compiled code. Now as soon as your MSIL is created, immediately it will be loaded. Now there is a programming language which is converted, which I can actually load directly into my components. Now this will get loaded into a component called JIT component, which is called as the main compiler, right? Which is called as JIT, just-in-time compiler, right? Which is part of CLR again. It immediately loads the MSIL code into something called CLR, Common Language Runtime, the heart of .NET framework, which is responsible for multiple things happening, compilation or access to libraries, so many things. We're going to understand most of the things of CLR as we go, right? So here, when we actually talk about CLR, right, CLR, which is my main component. So as soon as the managed code is loaded into CLR, right? Now CLR is the one which actually compiles or converts the managed code into something called native code. A native code or machine code or binary, you can call it as any name, right? So but in normal our .NET terms normally call it as, okay, the code which is converted to MSIL, CLR converts into native code, and this native code is the one which can be loaded on top of your operating system. So this is the one which is loaded on top of the operating system, right? And operating system in turn, right, loads into the heart, right? And as soon as your instructions are loaded on the operating system, this will generally generate anyways your output will be generated. This is how the complete compilation process happens in .NET. Right? You don't need any technical terms here. It's straightforward that as soon as you write any code, I can write code in any language. Basically, we are going to write code in C#, which is the most prevailing programming language. Let's say you are doing this, and as soon as we compile or build, it will become. We don't even see all these steps, right? We don't even see. We directly see something called machine code, which is also called as again assembly. Right? I'm gonna show you this, right? Because all these other steps are internal to CLR. Right? We'll just see the external library or exe as output. Simple, which can be used or executed on top of your operating system. Clear? Now this is a complete execution model of a .NET program happens on top of a framework. Now whatever happens here from compilers to the native code generation all happens again in a compiler, right? So everything is everything happens on top of compiler, and compiler is a key component of your something called a framework. Very important. That's how your application, whatever you're writing, right, is executed on operating system through your .NET framework. So this is a compiler process you have, and you can see whatever we're talking about CLR, we'll actually understand few important things about CLR, right? CLR in our tomorrow's class. Any questions till here, guys? So this is a simple introduction you have. So tomorrow we're going to touch base on CLR. We are going to see something about .NET frameworks mainly, framework versions mainly, and parallelly we'll see Visual Studio versions and horizontals, vertical and horizontal stuff, and then we'll right. So that's it for today, guys. Any questions across? I hope, yeah. I mean, initial 1 or 2 classes will be definitely theory, guys, because we have to understand the, we first have to understand the platform, what exactly we are learning, and then only we can go ahead.
How to open the recorded videos?
Sorry, Vinod, do you have any question? Can you just be a bit louder, please? I'm not able to hear.
I was not able to open the. I was not able to play the videos, recording videos you have sent it to me.
Fine. So here you can see this is a Dropbox folder. Please, this is a demo video placed, and then you have the player. So please install this player, right? And then you'll be able to play this. So from today onwards, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create everything in a separate folder, guys. So what I'm gonna do, I'll create C#.NET folder, right? So and for C#, it's I'm gonna place all the videos starting from today, right, including today's video, and then once we go to next phase, I'm gonna create a separate folder, right, so that you have all the video repository with you, guys. Okay.